And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Susan Galvan, who had a profound enlightenment experience that changed her life like having an NDE. Following this, she went on to get a master's degree in consciousness studies. Susan, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Susan, let's start at the beginning of your enlightenment experience and go from there.
Okay. I will give you a brief preface in the sense that I would say since I was a little girl, I was on a spiritual journey, trying to figure out somehow what was true within the spiritual dimension. And as a little girl, I got on the bus every Sunday and went to a different church by myself, exploring every available religion, including I went to Jewish temple and Catholic services. So this was some kind of an itch that I was born with. And as a teenager and young adult, I got busy with other things. But as I approached 30, I came back to it. And so I began reading many books and exploring, whatever resources were available. This was during the 70s. And a lot of things were popping up from the New Age and hippie generation. So one evening, I was sitting and reading a book on the Shinto religion, which I knew nothing about, but I was studying all the world's religions, trying to figure out what they were saying and what they had in common and what they didn't. And I'm sitting there reading this book when all of a sudden, something completely shifted within my awareness. Just like somebody flipped on a light switch. And suddenly, everything was transparent to me. I understood exactly what they were talking about in the book. I understood what all their symbols and metaphors actually represented. It was like the lights had turned on and I could see so clearly exactly what I was looking at. And of course, that just blew me away. So I got all excited, and then I started looking at other world religions, and it was the same with them. Suddenly, they were all crystal clear to me, too. And at this point, I'd have to say my spiritual greed took over. I got very excited, and I just wanted to plunge in and see more and more and more. But what actually happened was that there was an energy that had started to come in through the crown chakra at the top of my head. It was highly electrical in nature. And before that, I had never heard of similar types of openings, with the possible exception of Paul on the road to Damascus. But that's the only one I had ever heard of. And so I didn't know what was happening to me. At the time, I was working in a hospital for a clinical psychologist. We were running an in-hospital pain treatment program for pain patients, chronic pain patients. And I was doing daily group therapy and so forth. And the next day I went to work, still very excited, but I began to notice that I was dissociating. That if a phone call came in or somebody spoke to me, it took me a minute to reconnect and come back to register it and respond. And so that concerned me. So I went down to the pharmacy and bought protein bars or something to try to ground myself. It helped a little bit, but it began a process that just built day by day by day, becoming more and more and more intense. And there was so much energy flowing through me that it actually became frightening. I described it as being soaring through the universe, holding a tiger by the tail. There was no ground, no guardrails, no nothing. I was just zooming through intellectual, cognitive space. And I began looking for ways to try to manage my energy, but there were no books out, no videos, certainly. And so one thing I did was go home and fill the bathtub with water as hot as I could stand it and immerse myself in it. I knew this was something they used to do at the mental institutions back in the 50s for people who were being psychotic. I didn't want to be psychotic, but I knew I needed help. And it helped. Submerging myself in water actually helped ground me. I also began eating red meat. Red meat actually grounded my physical body and allowed me to not get consumed by this energy that was pouring through me. It felt like 220 volts through a 120 volt system. And so I knew that my body was not really prepared to handle this level of intensity. I went to work the next day and I told my boss, the clinical psychologist, what was going on with me. He said, "Would you like some Thorazine?" And I said, "No, thank you. We're going to treat this as a spiritual experience." But what I knew at that point was it was like I was balanced on a little tiny ball. And if the ball rolled to this way, it would take me down into disintegration and psychosis. And if I could keep the ball rolling this way, then I could progress with it. I could learn and grow with it into a new reality. And the pivot point was actually fear. If I let my fear take me over, the path ahead was going to be disintegration. So I had to work against my fear and grounding with proteins, with hot water, uh, with simple, everyday, ordinary tasks that kind of kept me just barely on the positive side. And this had started on a Saturday night. By Thursday, we had a team meeting in the hospital of the medical team working with all these patients. And but before that meeting, my boss and I were walking through the hospital, and I discovered that nothing electrical would work if I was within range. At that time, there were rooms full of electric typewriters. If I walked in, all the typewriters would stop. I could not ride on the elevators. The elevators wouldn't work if I was standing next to them. And as we walked together down the halls of the hospital, we both noticed that people coming toward me about 10 or 12 feet out would suddenly stop, like they'd hit a brick wall or something. Well, they were hitting the field that was around me. They couldn't see it, but they sure could feel it. So, again, this was all brand new. So we were kind of playing with it and laughing about it, but we didn't know what was actually going on. And after the team meeting luncheon, um, it was interesting. They gave me a farewell cake that said "Bon Voyage" on it. Hello, how did they know that? I had actually resigned a couple of weeks earlier, and the 31st of October was going to be my last day, and that was about a week away. So my boss and I decided that it was an enlightenment cake, and we cut it up in pieces and took it around to everybody we could find in the hospital and offered them a piece of cake to see if they wanted to share in the experience. And it was interesting. Some refused it totally. Some wanted big pieces. Um, we were having fun with it. But as the days went on, it just intensified and intensified. And I finally had an end of the world vision. And in my vision, it told me that the world was going to end the following week on All Saints' Day. Now, I didn't know if this was true or false, but it was a strong thing. And so what I was told was, what do I do about it? And they said, just tell people to spread love, smile at strangers, tell the people that you're close to that you love them. Just be a presence of love and light. That's all you need to do. So that's what I tried to do. Anyway, it went on and on. By Monday, I was so sensitized that I could tell by whatever clothing I put on, whatever colors, that I was exchanging that frequency with the environment. So that whatever I was putting out, its polar opposite was coming in just through what I was wearing, the colors, and also my jewelry. I'd never heard of this before, but this is what I was directly experiencing. So by Tuesday, I was wearing all white so that nothing was going out and nothing was coming in. And it kind of made sense to me why, for years, so many years, all medical people working in hospitals wore white, because sick people are energy holes. And, they would drain whatever positive energy they could from the people around them. White garments protect. They hold your energy in and they deflect whatever is coming at you. Even gurus wear white, probably for the same reason. So, and at this point, my circadian rhythms had become extremely pronounced. So my body had to kind of follow that pattern through the day or experience distress. And I was only eating like very bland foods other than my meat protein. And so the last night, Halloween, at this point, I felt that I had to relinquish every attachment that I had ever had. Still wondering if the world was going to end just for me or for everyone the next day. My rational mind, it was sitting there going, sure, but the intuitive side was very, very strong. So I was really in quite a quandary. And at that point, I felt that I had actually shed every attachment that would stand between me and the divine, with one exception. And that was my little daughter, who was 4 years old, who was dressed as a princess, and she had gone out with her daddy trick-or-treating. And I stayed home in bed with the covers over my head in an agony of how can I possibly end my attachment to this child. And as I'm laying there, this voice comes to me in my head, and it says, would you make such a demand of your beloved child? I said, no, no, of course not. And the voice said, why do you think me less than you? And it was like, oh, oh, I get it. You know, I'm not more loving than God. So that was my first direct communication from what to me was God the Father, because I was his beloved child, clearly. And that just kind of broke the bubble for me. So from that point forward, I was at peace, and I began to recover. But the energy didn't stop. The inflow of electricity didn't stop for months. And what happened was I came out to California a few months later. My sister invited me to join her at a yoga retreat. She was working at this graduate school for consciousness studies and working on her own master's. And so by the end of summer, packed up 4 kids and a husband, and we all moved to California, and I enrolled in the university. I needed like a caterpillar. I needed a chrysalis, a cocoon in which I could turn into green goo and allow the internal reorganization to take place. And so that became my cocoon. And I was there with a whole lot of other midlife adults that were also, in their own way, in the same process, which was very kind of grounding, because you can't see yourself as the one and only Messiah when you're sitting in a classroom full of Messiahs. And we had wonderful teachers. We had people like Houston Smith and Fritz Capra and many more. And of course, Ken Ring and Raymond Moody came. And so we were at a nucleus of the best available people and information for guiding through this kind of a growth experience. But even a year and a half later, I couldn't record anything on tape because all that would record was static. And if I started talking about my experience to somebody, it would come right back, and then they would be inducted into it with me, which some people found to be pretty scary. So it took a long time, but I kept working to ground, to integrate, to understand, to follow the revelations that kept coming to me. And so it was quite a journey. Initially, early in the journey, every time I had a new revelation, the power in the house would go off. They had to come and change the transformer behind the house, I don't know how many times. Another time I was standing in line in Safeway in the grocery store, and it was like a bolt of blue lightning came right down from the ceiling into my body because I had a new understanding, and the whole shopping center went dark. So, I tried to kind of not get stimulated unless I was in a safe place. But it was a long journey back. I was lucky enough to have a lot of resources to help me do that. And so in all the decades since then, I have worked with other people on their spiritual awakenings, their spiritual journeys, whether they were NDEs or others, and to help them find the path to where they could integrate what they had received and let it change their life into one of love and light as much as possible.
Before we talk about that, I want to go back and ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Do you believe in past lives?
I didn't know one way or the other until my daughter was born. And then she started telling me experiences from her past life. And we were all watching TV one night, and a picture came up on the TV screen, and it was Jimmy Dorsey, but it was just his picture with an autograph. And our 4-year-old says, "Oh, look, Jimmy Dorsey."
Wow.
Wow. So I wouldn't have recognized his face. So she's the one who really convinced me of past lives.
Well, do you think it's possible that in a past life you were a Shinto priest? Because when you had this experience, you were reading a book on Shintoism, and maybe that connected you in some way and started this off for you.
I never even thought of that. That's the first time that thought has come to me. I just wanted to know what's the truth? What lies at the heart of things? What is the nature of God? Is God really so mean and cruel and punishing, as so many religions when I was a little girl portrayed him? You couldn't do anything wrong or the thumb of God would come down and crush you, and I just couldn't quite believe that, but I was quite afraid. And so I don't know if there's a past life connection with Shintoism. Maybe there was. But I had another spiritual experience years before that wasn't as life-changing. But on that occasion, I was reading The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. And I left my body as a spark of consciousness. So who knows?
Do you believe in soul contracts made pre-birth? And if so, do you think this could be your contract or your mission, this incarnation?
I have come just recently to understand, as I've explored so many near-death stories like the ones that you put out, that this is kind of a common thing that they talk about, that they basically design their life and their contract before they come. And that makes sense to me, that when I look at all the different levels of my being, from astrological to soul structure to all the different influences that I've had, there's a pattern there. And it's a timeless pattern that has been gradually unfolding as I've lived my life. And so at this point, to me, it feels absolutely like there was a design that has governed my life, and brought me to where I am today.
Did your boss ever witness you shutting down electrical devices like the typewriters?
Oh, yeah, in the hospital? Sure.
What
He
was
was
his
walking with me.
what was his opinion of what was going on with you?
He didn't know any better than I did, but he couldn't deny it. It was happening. See, this was 1978. And in 1978, all of this exploration was really just getting going. There wasn't any authority out there. Many people were having spiritual openings and collapses because of drugs, lots of LSD and what have you. And practices like Stan Groff would come and put on big workshops and put people through these intensive breathing exercises, then go off and leave them with no follow through, and they become psychotic. So there was something called the Spiritual Emergency Network in San Francisco, started by John Perry. And I joined that, and I went out on those calls a lot to people who, had been caught up in a semi spiritual or astral or altered state. And sometimes I had to 5150 them because they were so psychotic, they needed to be hospitalized.
Did you note that after this experience you had any new abilities that could be considered psychic?
No. And the reason I say that is there are three kinds of openings that take place, typically, three standard categories. And in the Kundalini opening that many people experience, it comes through the body, it comes up from the base of the spine, up through the chakras, and leaves through the crown. It's very body-based, it's very sensual, and it's very psychic. It opens up a lot of powers, sensory powers into the environment and into the field. I had the opposite, which is and it's very magnetic. The Kundalini energy is very magnetic. I had the opposite. I had the descent of power, the descent of light through the top of my head, and I had to find a way to integrate it and bring it all the way down to the base. And but it was very intellectual, so it was an enlightenment experience of the mind, not so much of the body. And then the third one is the mystical experience, the ecstatic, the heart, the opening of the heart in divine love, where the mystic joins the beloved in an ecstatic love relationship. And so that's the deeply emotional one. And the one that has the most powers usually associated with it is the Kundalini type. But I found out as time went on that anytime the ego is kind of set aside, and higher frequencies and intelligences come in, that people, once they're opened, then they may have all sorts of things that become accessible to them. I tried to avoid that. I didn't want to be channeling. I didn't want to have people coming in and telling me stuff. I was just trying to reorganize who I was and how I lived in the world. I had 5 kids and a husband too. So that's very good to keep you grounded. So I have never been psychically open. My husband is, my daughter is, my mother was, one sister is. But for me, that would have been a distraction. It would have pulled me away from my mission, what I was here to do.
Speaking of what you're here to do, currently you help near-death experiencers process their NDE.
Right.
Can you share with us some of the most common problems people have after having that experience?
Well, if you listen to them, and I know you have, um, when they come back into the body, well, first of all, a lot depends how they died. If they died from something like an allergic reaction to anesthesia, their recovery is pretty quick. If they died due to some severe physiological failure, then they may have a long physical recovery as well. But when they come back, they have been open to an entirely different understanding of what's real and of what life is and what human existence is all about. And it is so different that, first of all, to try to assimilate it themselves, they try to share it with other people, but it's usually quite rejected because other people don't know what they're talking about. So it gets labeled. Oh, you're schizophrenic. Oh, you're hallucinating. Those are dreams. You were just dreaming. There's been a lot of that from licensed professionals, medical, therapeutic, from religious leaders. A lot of people try to go to their priest or their preacher and get help, and they don't understand either. So they're left with this incredible experience, this awakening into absolute love and light and bliss, uh, and no one to share it with. Until IANS came along. Now, in IANS, they can find one of the keys to recovery, and that is other people who get it, people who share that experience. I was just with 800 people who have come back from heaven. So nobody is going around being skeptical, you know. Uh, it makes a big difference to those who are still very tender from what they've gone through. But family, work, friends, um, the world doesn't accept what they're telling them. And so it makes it very hard because in many cases, they cannot go back to the work they were doing. In many cases, their spouse, if they have one, thinks, who is this person? This is not who I married. Even their children go, why? Mom's not the same. Dad's completely different now. So the life tends to be in pieces even once they're healthy enough to try to move forward with it. At the same time, they've come back with this message that their mission, if they have one, is to embody that loving presence as best they can in their day-to-day living, not to have a big mission, but to simply be that presence wherever they go, as much as they can. Easier said than done. So without a path, without a map, without a guide, it's very difficult for most people to figure out how to navigate this brand new world in which they live, but they can't go back to the old one. That's the problem. No matter how hard they try, they cannot go back because they know better now. So that's a pain. That makes their suffering, kind of incredible. Many of them just want to leave here and go back to the other side. Why am I going to stay here and suffer through all of this? I'd much rather be on the other side. The only problem with that is that suicide means that you're going to have to come back and do your journey again and not leave it midstream. So it doesn't really solve anything. When I was at IANS 2 weeks ago, I was sitting at my table. I came as a vendor to sell the book I've written about guiding people on this journey. And a group of 7 young boys came and stood around me in a semicircle at my table. They were, I would say, 16, 17 years old. And they wanted me to tell them, what's an NDE? And what happens in an NDE? And so I told them as quickly as I could in 5 to 7 minutes. But they were very attentive. They really, really wanted to know. They were respectful and they were attentive. And one of the things that had brought them there was because 2 of the boys had been in a near fatal car accident. One of them was the driver, The other one was the one who almost died. They wanted to know if that was a near-death experience. And I asked him, I said, did you leave your body? And he said, no. And I said, then it wasn't a near-death experience. But it awakened something in all of them. And so we talked about it. And I made it the point then too that, when people come back, they have such a longing to return that sometimes suicide seems like a good idea. But I said, but it's not, because then you have to come back and do it again. So even in that short exchange, I was trying to help them understand, that this is a life transforming experience, but you have to continue with the transformation. You have to work it all the way through, or else come back and do it all again. So, but I was really touched. I was touched to have that opportunity to kind of fill in their questions and help them understand. So I don't know, who knows what effect that'll have down the road, but I wish we did more of that. I wish we had more of that.
If reincarnation is real, why do we keep coming back over and over again?
I don't know the answer to that, but I hear lots of speculation. Um, part of it is that on the other side, there is no contrast. Consciousness requires contrast. We live in it here in the physical human world. It's a world that's dualistic, a world of contrasts, good and bad, night and day, man and woman. And the interaction of those opposites creates a kind of friction that generates awareness. And on the other side, there is no friction. There is no interactivity of opposites that actually produces a new understanding or a new awareness. So people, they come here to have the experience, to learn. And certainly suffering is a great teacher. None of us want to suffer. None of us enjoy suffering at all. But it's a powerful teacher. And so they come in a sense to grow their souls. And as far as I could see it, I think that's what I came here for, is to grow my soul. I have no idea where I am in the spectrum of soul growth. No idea. Doesn't really matter. But I came here to see if I could learn what I most wanted to learn. And so to me, that answers your question.
How do you define consciousness? And in your opinion, does it originate from our human bodies?
Well, I just started a new book. And I started with physics, quantum physics. One of my mentors was Arthur M. Young, who wrote The Theory of Process in a book called The Reflexive Universe, The Evolution of Consciousness. I worked closely with Arthur there, and I've worked with his theory all of these years. And for Arthur, the quantum of action and consciousness are one and the same thing. It all arises in that first spark. And then all creation unfolds from there. And this world is one of infinite becoming, conscious infinite becoming. That consciousness varies in frequency according to what's being manifested. So Arthur had the 7 levels of creation, the light, beginning with light, with the photon, the quantum of action. The second level is the quantum field. The third level is the atom. Fourth is the molecule, the molecular realm, which is the first visible realm. Fifth is plant or cellular life, which is the first to actually be alive and grow. And sixth is the animal kingdom. And seventh is the human. And the consciousness pervades all of them, but at different frequencies. And certainly this has been the Native American belief all along, that everything has spirit, everything is alive. But it's not self-conscious until the seventh level, the human. Only human beings have self-consciousness, are self-aware, can be self-aware. So to me, consciousness and light, same thing. Same thing. And both are intrinsic in every element of our reality and every aspect of creation.
Do you believe that the body creates consciousness, or
No,
the opposite? The body is a
no,
manifestation of consciousness.
right. The body is a manifestation of light. All bodies are light. We're all light, but at different frequencies. And the body is the manifestation of the soul. The soul is also a state or stage in conscious development in the evolution of the whole, on the path to wholeness. But the body is a product, the manifestation of the soul. The soul is not in the body lives in the soul. And the soul is fully conscious. And it's the soul that leaves during an NDE and goes into what we call the heaven realm. But think about it. The photon, the realm of light, there is no time, no space, no mass. What do people report in NDEs? There's no time as we know it. There's no space or distance. All they have to do is think of a place and they're there instantly. So there's no duration, no distance. And of course, there's no mass. There's only the photons. So that is the origin, not the physical. The physical comes from that domain, not to it.
Some of my near-death experiencers will talk about when they're on the other side, the monkey mind of this world disappears.
Of course.
Can you expand on that and talk about the difference between the mind or the monkey mind of the body and pure consciousness?
Sure, absolutely. Again, in Arthur's Evolution of Consciousness, the first phase is instinct, and the second is emotion, like the quantum field. Emotions are, fast moving, very intense, and short lived, unless they're tied to a story or a concept. And that would be the third stage, the atomic stage, but in a human consciousness, it's the ego. It's the concrete mind. It's the monkey mind that talks to us all the time and tells us who we are and what reality is. And just like the atom, though, it focuses around a center, a particular existence. And so it's the ego, the concrete mind. But as development continues beyond that, you take that concrete mind, that monkey mind, at the fourth stage out into the world. You test its messages to you. You test the validity of what you think or what you've learned or what you know. You try things out and you learn. It's like the molecular stage is all about combination and separation. And so it has an infinite number of ways to combine with things to learn something. But in the fifth stage, the mind shifts, and instead of being externally oriented, now it's internal. That's when we start meditating. That's when we discover that we are a real self inside an ego. The ego is hollow. It doesn't really recognize that it has a self living at its center. But by the fifth stage, we know that we have become a real self, and that self is growing in consciousness. So then that part of us can control the monkey mind. So what I do when the monkey mind starts up, and it never goes away, it's not supposed to. Egos are important in this world. But I just say, well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. You can go take a nap now. I've got this, you know. You have to learn some way to kind of shut it off, because otherwise, it'll have you going through life like a crazy person. So it plays its part. We all need a concrete mind, but its part is limited and it needs to be supervised.
Do you think that we were meant to have NDEs? And if so, is it because perhaps we've evolved to a new level of understanding?
Well, it's interesting to speculate about that. There were people in history who did come back from death, but they were very rare, very few and far between. Mostly when you died, your heart stopped, that was it. Only with the resuscitation techniques that were developed around 1970 has that changed dramatically. Millions of people now have been resuscitated, many millions, and more will be. It's not like we're done, lots more will be. And I think they estimate that 20% of the ones who have been resuscitated come back with a conscious recollection of being on the other side. So that brings the why now? Why now? Why do we have this expanding, growing cohort of people who know that heaven is real, the other side is quite real, that this reality here is almost like a fabrication for us to learn and grow. And so why now? Well, if you understand the stages of a process, you understand that our civilization on this planet, and this is just my opinion, this is how I see it, so don't take this as God's truth, but when in the chart, or in the stages of process, energy comes in, it descends through the first 4 stages in an involutionary way. And at each stage, it loses freedom and it gains stability and it gains form and it gains structure. But at the 4th stage, there comes a point where that energy has been expended. And there's so much fragmentation now that there's no center, there's nothing generating new energy. And that's when entropy sets in, or a death, the death of the form. And many people die at that point. They kind of run out of things to do, or they run up against a brick wall and give up, or whatever. But you can see it in the natural world too. Entropy will win if there's no renewal of energy. Okay. And you can see it in our churches right now. There are 14,000 different Protestants, sects or churches. 14,000. So that's energy fragmented and dissipated to where it's almost meaningless anymore, except for a few people who might be in any one particular sect. So, and we look out at our world and our values, our sense of purpose. What are we doing here? What do we mean to each other? All of that, God, this week has been a horror for us. An innocent blonde girl stabbed for no reason because she was on a bus. A man who tried to speak in neutral terms with others, to have conversations, was shot in front of thousands of students. It's we're coming to that point of entropy in this civilization, I think. And so you take that decline in humanity and put it aside, the awakening into through near-death experience into another level of existence. And you have to ask yourself, okay, what is emerging? what comes next? Will we be restored to that spark that set all this in motion? Will we see the light that will reignite our understanding of our purpose in life? Will we or won't we? Who knows? But I think that's what we are rapidly approaching, is that, and interestingly, it's called, in Arthur's theory, it's called the turning point. Who got demolished this week? The man who started the turning point. So we are at a turning point, and all we can do is pray that we rediscover the light and let it engage us and energize us to climb out of this pit.
So when you say discovering the light, that would be the new renewable energy against entropy?
Well, light is purpose. It's purposive. Light follows the path of least resistance. It aims for a goal. And so one of the ways I used to talk to students about it is like, imagine a hurricane coming. We're in the fourth stage. We're approaching that nadir. And it's like a hurricane approaching. The storm gets more and more and more intense, as the center of the storm approaches. But then there comes a moment when the eye appears overhead and everything is clear and calm, and you see the light, it returns. And you go, oh, this is not the end. That's what we were here for. And then the eye passes on and the storm comes back. But it's now the backside of the storm is still fierce, but it's receding. It's going away. It's diminishing. So I think we're in the part of the storm that is just approaching that turning point. And what happens is you go, oh, that's who I am. Or, oh, that's why we're here. Or, oh, that's what we need to be doing. It's like a moment of awakening, truly awakening to the purpose of existence, to the purpose of your existence, mine, ours, our existence. And if we have that purpose suddenly shedding light on us, then we know where to go next. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Still going to be the backside of the storm. But we know where we're going now. We know what's calling us. We know what our purpose is. And if that were to come to be, well, in a way, I can't imagine it won't happen. I can't imagine it won't happen. I just don't know when or how.
That was going to be my question. How would it happen? How would we recognize it? What would the event be?
I don't know. Just like I don't know that Charlie Kirk's murder this week was, who could have predicted that as the turning point that it's turning out to be? Mostly because it was the younger generation that loved him. It was the next generation that loved him. And so they're the ones who are, most impacted by this, but they are the future. So, you could have predicted it, but you couldn't necessarily predict the response. So, I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows when the eye of the storm will come and what it will reveal when everything clears for a moment. But I'm going to be watching, and I hope everybody else is watching too, because I do trust that there is a divine power and presence at the heart of all of this. And we go through these experiences in order to eventually become one with it. And but there are many things that we have to go through as human beings before that oneness can be actually not only realized, but inhabited.
You mentioned Paul on the road from Damascus.
Yeah,
Do you think he had an NDE?
yeah, I do. Or at least the kind of transformational experience I had, he was struck by lightning and it changed everything for him. He was killing Jews before that, tracking him down and killing him. And he met Jesus on the road to Damascus in that experience, and it changed everything for him. Do I believe everything he wrote? Oh, well, who knows? But I do absolutely believe he had a near-death experience, and he met Jesus, and that transformed him and set a brand new direction to his life.
If people want to find out more about what you're up to, what is your website?
Mischief. Well, I've just started a new foundation. It's called Unity of the Spirit Foundation. I had Unity of the Spirit Church in California for 14 years. And it is about that in spirit, there is only unity. And it honors all world religions, it honors everybody. It's not dogmatic in any sense. And so people can go and sign up to be on our email list at unityofthespirit.foundation. Or if they just want to contact me, they can go to galvanicommunications.com. And that is my website with my phone number and what I offer as an individual.
Your book is called...
I just want to show you my book. Do you mind if I show everybody my book?
No, go ahead.
Can you see it?
A Guide for Life After a Near-Death Experience.
Yeah. And it's not a big book. It's about a 3-hour read, but I think it's pretty complete. And what I like about a book is as time goes on, because this is not a fast process, as time goes on, you can go back and pick up the book as where you are in your journey changes and still find what you need. So
if people want to learn more about the book, should they go to your website or Amazon?
Well, I actually have, I had hired a company to try to help me with marketing, and they put up a website just for the book, but it hasn't done much. So I would say come to Amazon.
Earlier, you mentioned one of the keys of processing your NDE is being in a community of experiencers like IANs.
Right.
What are some of the other keys to processing?
Well, first of all, learning how to manage the newly opened state that you're living in, the energies that are coming in. Some of it may be really unwelcome or overwhelming or aggravating. I had one woman recently that was wide open and she couldn't even sleep at night. She was bombarded with entities wanting her to do stuff, you know? And I told her, put on a white nightgown and put something white over the top of your head. And she did, and she started sleeping. So, um, so you have to learn how to kind of manage the phenomena that accompany this new state of being, first of all, before you can settle into anything else. And also learning things like meditation, working in the garden, anything that you do that is grounding, earth-based. Think of the monasteries and nunneries. What did they do when they weren't praying? They were out in the garden, they were washing dishes, they were doing laundry. They were busy with physical tasks that were very grounding for them. Just walking barefoot on the ground is helpful, or laying down on the grass. So first, you kind of have to get yourself together and begin to have some order in your life. And then then there's a decision point of, well, which one of these new abilities do I want to really develop and become good at? So then you may seek guides or teachers or practitioners to help you with specific things that you are either experiencing right now or that you want to learn how to experience effectively. So that's reaching beyond just companionship to people who have expertise, people who've been there, who are doing that, to give you a focus, a sense of purpose, and then how to deliver what you have to share. What's the appropriate place for me? Do I do it in a profession? Do I just do it in daily life? What is my path? But it gets easier to find your path, as time goes on, and studying other people's paths, exchanging information, finding people to work with, where you can assist each other in whatever your purpose is. So that's a kind of a real simplistic overview, but it takes time. Some of these people have been tens of years of trying to recover from a near-death experience because they didn't really have any framework to do the work they needed to do.
Susan, before we finish up, can you
Yeah.
leave us with a last positive message?
God is love. We are God. We are embodied love. We are embodied light. Share it, even if it's just to smile at a stranger or hug and tell the ones close to you that you love them. That's what we're here to finally do, to recognize we are one. We are one in the light. We are one in the love of God. We are God. So that's my message.
Susan, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.